Somebody has lots of birds.
All right, looks like we're live. So thank you everyone for joining us. A good Saturday afternoon, and welcome to our eighth presentation of our Black Males Mental Health and Wellbeing support group. And so we're really excited. We're actually broadcasting this time, or at least I am, from the nation's first men's health and education clinic in the barbershop here over at JP's that we started about 4 years ago now. And so really excited to be broadcasting from the barbershop. And at some point I'll flip the camera around and you see all the guys getting those nice haircuts. But yeah, thank you for joining us. And today we will have a live discussion from three of the industry leaders, primarily in the areas of fatherhood and mental and emotional health and well-being. So with that, we have obviously Dr. Logan Edwards and Dr. Thomas. I'll let you gentlemen share a little bit about yourselves. We'll go with you, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, yes, Dr. Logan Edwards. I am an assistant professor and health education program coordinator at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I'm also a lecturer of health behavior and health equity at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I specialize in teaching mental health and well-being education to future health and physical educators, as well as future public health professionals. And I teach them the knowledge and the skills of health and health behavior, and then how to best integrate that knowledge and those skills into their own public health professions. My research and my service projects consist of improving mental health literacy and access to mental health support services to underserved and otherwise vulnerable populations. And that is the work that I am currently working on with Dr. Thomas and with Aaron Perry.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Dr. Thomas.
Looks like I muted myself. Sorry about that break there. I am Alvin Thomas, assistant professor in human development family studies in the School of Human Ecology, all at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I am a trained clinical psychologist focused on the well-being of Black men and boys, families in general. So exploring a number of mental health outcomes, psychological outcomes, looking at issues like violence, suicide ideology, academic outcomes, overall well-being outcomes as well. So maybe, yeah, I also spend some of my time exploring fatherhood and father engagement, looking at how institutions and service providers interact with fathers, especially non-resident African-American fathers, and trying to understand the utility and the efficacy of African-American non-resident fathers in the lives of their children and their families. So I look forward to having this wonderful discussion.
Yes, yes, looking forward to it. And it looks like we have Derrick Phillips. Derrick, are you with us? I don't see, it looks like he's coming in now. How you doing, brother?
I'm fine. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our guest today, Derrick Phillips. You want to share with the audience a little bit about yourself, Derrick?
My name is Derrick Phillips, as you said. I'm the executive director and founder of Real Dads Network. Real Dads Network is an organization that's been around for 15 years. And what we do is that we promote positive Black fathers in all media. And 20 years ago, I actually did the first documentary that was called first documentary on positive Black fathers called Real Dads, Black Men on Fatherhood, that had commentary by the late, great Ossie Davis. As a result of that documentary, what we realized is that Black men needed a space to go where they can have, share their stories and feel vulnerable and have other men to talk to. So as a result of that, we created Real Dads Network. And Real Dads Network, our whole thing is just to promote positive images. We've done daddy-daughter dances. We've been doing for the last 12 years. We've been doing Philadelphia to do a daddy-daughter dance, Chicago, Virginia. We also do a Real Dads Week where we celebrate fathers for a whole week. We do a whole week of events. We've given away over 256 awards away to dads. We've given 5 $1,000 scholarships to high school graduating seniors. We promoted a Black fatherhood exhibit. So we just tried in every component, just promote positive fathers and also trying to change policies as it relates to fathers.
And I love it when I hear that we're not only talking the talk, but we're walking the walk too. I love that. And so, Derrick, you didn't hear before you came in. I'm actually inside we're inside the barbershop. And so I'm very pleased. So I have a men's health clinic here in the barbershop. It's Madison's largest Black barbershop, JP Hair Design. And so we decided to make this a place where we host these from moving forward. Kind of along the same lines that you were talking about, particularly being in a space where Black men are comfortable, they respect, and there's no shame, no fear, and then it's often important that we continue to find these spaces for our men. And so with that said, let's guys give me some feedback on maybe how this week has been for you. Anything that jumps out? I know that Dr. Thomas did a nice interview with NBC. But yeah, share a little bit about how your week has been so far.
So since you singled me out there, put me all out there, I guess I'll go first.
All right.
Yeah, so I was contacted by NBC News, the local news chapter over here in Wisconsin, Madison, to speak about the possible mental health impact of the current dual condition, the pandemic and the second pandemic of police killings and civilian killings of Black people, both men and women. And I thought the reporter did an excellent job of really capturing both the research piece, but also the personal news story of what these issues are doing to people on the ground, and also what we can potentially look forward to as far as what the research is telling us about these issues. And also I was able to point to some very real tips that people could take away as far as trying to find out for themselves if they're at increased risk of developing mental health challenges. And if they do see some of those symptoms and other issues popping up in their lives or in the lives of loved ones, what they can do to take care of themselves, what they can do to reduce the impact. So that took a lot of my time. There were other things that I was doing this week that took a lot of my time. And I think as Black academics, speaking for myself, and I'm sure Dr. Edwards and others would agree, there is this overwhelming desire to continue to be part of this conversation and to continue to do this work. But for people who are different organizations or in different institutions where they may not necessarily feel that organizational or institutional support for any conversations that they may want to have around these things, that is extremely challenging, a really difficult situation to be in. But even if you're in a space where you do feel supported in having these conversations, it is still an onerous load to carry, because you have that political piece that you have to, that political tightrope that you're walking as a faculty member and as a researcher, as a professional, but you also have that human, visceral connection, that real connection, and trying to always balance these two is really, really difficult. And I think even when I think about what's coming up on Saturday, I think during the week, I think to myself, oh my God, I'm going to have conversations on Saturday. Have I even taken care of myself? I don't know if I can have conversations, because this is just so hard and I have no outlet. And then when we get to around Friday, Saturday morning, I have to find something to give myself an outlet. And today it was walking onto my patio and watering my little vegetable garden and watering my little plants and putting mini Riperton on blast, putting Al Green on blast, and just forgetting the world for a while and just spending my time watering my garden, eating my lettuce fresh from the garden, and listening to these old folks really speak to the sensuality and the beauty of being Black in America.
Excellent. Dr. Edwards.
Yeah, well said, Dr. Thomas. And I've been liking your posts of your food plate that you've been posting on Facebook, because you do a great job of preparing some healthy, good-looking meals, my man.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I do like it because it's part of that message that we bring every single week, that I see that you're taking care of yourself in that way. And so many people still don't realize the impact that healthy eating has on your mental, emotional health and well-being. So to answer your question, Aaron, that's what I was going to speak to, is that I've actually been doing okay, and it's because I prioritize self-care.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be my message that I bring to these forums every single week. And there's all kinds of strategies that I'll continue to throw out every week, but the three most basic strategies you'll hear me say it and get sick of me saying it every single week is diet, exercise, and sleep. You prioritize those three things in your life, and you'll be able to make it through so much more than you ever would have thought, and so much better than you would if you weren't eating well, not moving your body, or getting good sleep. And those are within all of our control. I know it's harder for some folks in some circumstances to control some of those things, but those three things are more controllable than a lot of other things going on in the world that we can't control. So I just say, make sure that you are eating healthy, that you are getting out and moving your body, and that you are focusing on getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single night, and you are ready to take on whatever every next day puts before you or brings at you. So I've been doing well because I've been prioritizing those three things. And something I've been hearing that I hope we can speak to today, I'm sure we will, a lot this weekend, last week, and really just this last month, is a lot of Black folks like us, a lot of Black and brown folks like us, doing a lot of work, having a lot of explanations, having a lot of discussions, taking care of ourselves and taking care of other people. And I think that there's a lot of compassion fatigue that is being expressed from what I'm seeing on social media. A lot of work having. So I hope that we get to speak to compassion fatigue. I would like our listeners and our viewers to look up compassion fatigue and to become familiar with that, because it's something that you typically hear in healthcare a lot. A lot of healthcare workers, a lot of caretakers experience compassion fatigue. And the danger of that is that you're so busy showing compassion for others and taking care of others that you forget to show compassion for yourself and care for yourself. So we can speak to that a little bit today on how we can help combat compassion fatigue that we all might be feeling right now.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. And Derrick, we're going to let you have the floor. You are our guest this week. We appreciate you. Where are you? I think you're based out of New York. Is that correct?
I'm based out of New York City.
Okay. Yeah. So how's New York? How's that going?
You know, in terms of New York, everybody is still trying to, figure this out. You know, a lot of people are really wanting to go out and really do things that they used to do, but trying to stay contained has really been very challenging for a lot of people, especially our, younger people. But on the flip side of that is that they've also been, very active in terms of the protests.
Yes.
New York has been very active in terms of the protests. And we had a couple of our Real Dads Club meetings. And that's one of the things that we spoke about in terms of this whole protest, where a lot of people were feeling early on that we already been down this road. So this is not going to be any different than any other time. So part of our conversation was to say, you know what, this is different. This is different than any other time in our history, because when we talk about this pandemic in terms of COVID-19, we also got to talk about in terms of these protests. This protest has also been a pandemic. It is worldwide.
Yes, it is.
And that has been the first time really in our history where people across the globe have really come together to say, you know what, enough is enough in terms of what's happening in terms of the injustice. So we constantly tell our, older gentlemen in the club is that, you know what, this time is different. And our role right now is really not to knock down these young people that are out there protesting, but find ways to support them in any way that we can. And then when they're feeling as though they're a little weak, then we need to pick them up and give them that strength to continue to guide them, because this time is different. And I think with our young people is that it's everybody involved. So they've gotten everybody involved. And I tell people, my daughters, I have a 24-year-old and a 20-year-old, they're on the phone constantly with social media, and they're talking about companies, that this company needs to make a statement about their supporting this cause, because if they're not making a statement, we're not going to support them. You know, so this is what the young people are doing. And this time is really different because it's also technology. So
Right.
technology has, but overall, to answer your question, we're doing, you know, fine in terms of New York. We're just trying to continue to do what we're doing at Real Dads Network. Once a week on Thursdays, we have our Real Dads Club where we have the fathers that'll come. We have about maybe 15 to 18 dads that are there, and we talk about what's going on. We bring in therapists. We've had a psychologist. We have people come in talking about the whole issue in terms of Black men going through this situation of injustices and how we handling that and how we dealing with that.
Excellent, excellent. And you know, all you guys bring up some great points, and we're going to get to each and every one of them. One of the things I'd like to start off is talking about how do you help fathers distinguish between what we normally feel versus what we normally feel reach the point of unhealthy. How can we engage fathers that think that what they're doing day-to-day basis, given everything that's happening, like when does that trigger goes off that, okay, I'm now in an unhealthy place, but it's been so normal for so long. How do you explain that or help someone that may be listening or know someone that may be struggling in that area? Let's start with Dr. Thomas and we'll work our way around. I think you're muted.
I keep muting myself. I kind of touched on this in the interview with NBC News, that if you're having these kinds of feelings like anger, resentment, feeling tired, overwhelmed, angry, fearful, restless, easily triggered, easily irritated, feeling like you're short with people. These are normal feelings. If you're feeling the need to isolate, you feel scared when you walk out the door. These are normal feelings because these are not normal times. Again, I want to stress that we're living through two major pandemics, one that is more recent and one that we've been living with for all of our lives. There's not one of us alive here today who has not been dealing with racism and the impact of racism, whether it be direct or vicarious. We've been dealing with it in one way or another, personal or institutional. We've been aware of it all of our lives. And so those two pieces, those two forces are now, not even juxtaposed, but they're now amalgamated. They've joined in one nexus of really horrible normal. And so the response to that horrible normal is these kinds of emotional, psychological expressions. So if you're feeling that, I want to let you know that that is normal. Those are normal reactions. Where you start veering into the non-normal is when you start seeing these reactions almost every day of the week. If it becomes an almost every day of the week, I feel this particular feeling and it's affecting my interactions with people who are around me. So if every day I wake up and I feel angry, I feel easily irritated, more days than not during the week, and it's affecting my relationship with my children and my wife or my partner, then I think you're running into the realm where what is a normal reaction has been going on for so long, it's so chronic, that is beginning to affect your functioning, your ability to do what you would normally have done. And so that when in psychology, when we think of what's abnormal behavior, it's when a particular behavior starts to affect your functioning in multiple places in your life. So it's affecting your functioning at work. If it's only affecting your functioning at work, then there might be something going on at work that's pulling for that. If it's only affecting your functioning at home, but not at work or not anywhere else, then there might be something going on at home that might be a precursor, that might be a stimuli for pulling some of those emotional responses. But if it's affecting your functioning at work, and it's affecting your functioning at home, then you potentially have an issue going on there. And I would say seek help. And I'm sure Dr. Edwards and Derrick and myself will kind of we'll swing around again to talk about what kinds of things people can do to seek help.
Yes.
And fathers, this is an excellent time for you to start modeling the kind of behaviors that you want for your child, as far as being able to seek help, being able to talk around emotions. This is an excellent opportunity for you to do it for yourself, but also doing it for your children and your partner.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Dr. Edwards, and then we'll go to Mr. Phillips.
Yes, absolutely. I won't say too much more than that. I think he hit it spot on with some of the red flags in yourself to be looking out for. If you just notice that your home and friend and family relationships are being negatively impacted, if your productivity and your energy at work is being negatively impacted, if you don't feel like you've got the mental or physical energy to take care of your mind and your body, whereas otherwise maybe you did, those are the signs that you've got to do something to help yourself or to seek help from others. What this reminds me of is burnout. I think just this year, the CDC and the World Health Organization both just identified burnout as a diagnosable condition. It's geared in the context of the workplace environment, but you can also kind of see some of those signs at home too, I think. And they define burnout as if you feel like you are depleted of all energy, that you feel like you don't have any mental or physical resources, you have this feeling of exhaustion. And I think that we spoke about this last week, Aaron, about how we're all sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Yes. And you kind of actually feel, you acknowledge to yourself, I'm actually tired, I'm actually exhausted. That might be that first sign that, yes, like Dr. Thomas said, that's okay. You probably should be tired and exhausted through everything that we're going through. But if it starts then bleeding into feeling like you are separating yourself or distancing yourself from your relationships or from your work life, taking a unhealthy steps back away from all of those things and not connecting anymore, that might be a sign that you're not taking care of yourself like you need to be, or that you're not seeking help from others like you could be. If you've got feelings of negativity and cynicism towards your family, towards your friends, towards your workplace environment, that might be another sign. If you just feel like you've got reduced either home life or job related productivity, or the I guess the standard or the practice that you're typically used to producing is no longer there anymore, whether that be home life and how you are able to get along with your family and your friends, or work life, how well your work normally is typically now taking a hit, then those all might be signs that I've got to do something for myself. I got to start taking care of myself, or I need to go seek help from others. If I got too much negativity, too much cynicism, too much distancing from myself and other people, and just a mental, physical energy depletion or exhaustion.
Wow, excellent response. And what I can tell you, it sounds like we're all going to at some point need a little help. That is what you just described. Is, I got to admit, I've been harboring those feelings. I fit into almost everything you said. Thank God I'm a resource man. I know how to access resources, and I know how to, diet, exercise, and get my sleep too, So Derrick, how about you?
You know what? I think everything you said, Dr. Edwards and Dr. Thomas, everything you guys said is spot on in terms of, when we're dealing with a lot of fathers, for them to know that what they're going through right now, it's normal. And it's okay to be angry, because that's one of the biggest challenges when we're dealing with men. It's like you're angry, and then a lot of times when we get angry, we want to do something about it. So we talk about finding those healthy outlets to release that anger. So you're not building it up, but also being able to identify when you're feeling as though anxious, when you're feeling as though, I need to explode. But what's very important, you guys spoke about this, is for men to speak to other people. Because one of the challenges that we have when we're dealing with men and fathers in particular is that we tend to hold everything inside because we don't want to be vulnerable. And what we tell our fathers in terms of the club, this is the time where you really want to be vulnerable. So when we have our club meetings, we open it up and let men just talk about what's going on, what's happening with you. Put down your guards, because we are accustomed to always having our guards up. And right now, that's not the place where we need to be, because there is so many things happening in our communities, in our homes. We have a lot of people who are losing family members. They're losing their mothers, dads, uncles, cousins. So everybody is sort of angry. And then you have the whole issue of just dealing with, what happened in terms of the injustice. Here it is. We've been in the house for 2 or 3 months, and I'm angry because I can't go out. I'm angry because I can't move. And now I have this situation where I see this police officer is killing this man, and we're supposed to sit here. So it's like, where do I release all of that anger? So that's why it's very important for men at this point to talk to other people. So when we have the club meetings, I couldn't make the meeting past Thursday because I was on another interview. But what happens is that they continue the meeting. They says, no, we're going to have the meeting, because what's important for them is to have an outlet. And I think what's very important for men is for us to really understand that, we don't have to do this all by ourselves, because we've always been thinking that, as a man, I'm the one. No, you're not the one. It's about us. And the way that you get through this is when we all work together and understand that, listen, I feel like crying. I don't know what to do. I'm hurt. I feel powerless. And we have fathers who is talking about, and the trauma that fathers are facing when we're dealing with the whole injustice. A lot of us when we talked about what's happening in terms of Floyd, a lot of Black men that brought up past experiences about when they were stopped by the police, when a gun was put in their face. Yeah. So now it's like they try to take that stuff and put it behind them. But now this incident comes up, and now the anger is like there again. Like, what do I do? I don't want to be soft and all that stuff. So it's like, it's okay. Deal with what happened, deal with the trauma, but also speak to people. And even with our club meetings, we've had therapists come on, we've had psychologists come on, we had professionals come on and talk. And it was really rewarding when the dad was like, wow, you know what? The way I feel, that's normal? I kept all this stuff in. You mean to tell me that that's normal for me to feel like, I was feeling depressed because this guy, police officer told me what to do and I couldn't do anything. I felt like a child. No, there's nothing wrong with that, because, at the end of the day, you want to go home to your family. So It's very important. And I think it's everything that you got, both of you are speaking about, all of you, the importance of just speaking, the importance of seeking help, but the importance of not letting things build up inside of you. Because when you let them build up inside, what happens is that you tend to release it to the people that are closest to you, who happens to be your wife, your children. Yeah. So you have to find those outlets, but also identify, and this is an important time to really get to know yourself, to know when you have reached that point, and to say, I've reached that point, so I need to know that I need to find help, or I need to know that, I didn't exercise this morning. And I know that when I exercise, my day tends to feel better when I exercise. And when I don't exercise, I can't take certain things that are happening to me. So knowing yourself, and also just being clear in terms of what you need to do in terms of moving forward.
Yeah. Excellent. To add to that, Derrick, if I may, I love everything you said. It's so spot on. I also would include speaking to not just people generally, but for us on this forum particularly, men speak to other men, particularly about what you're going through and how you're feeling. It's a different feeling. The women in my life that I can tell I feel like crying, I feel depressed, I feel scared, I feel angry, and I don't know what to do with these emotions. I love the support and the warmth that a woman can give me, but it is a different type of love and connection and warmth that I feel from the men in my life that I tell those things to, because we know as men that we're not expressing those things to other men like we need to be. And it feels refreshing. It's liberating to express those things to men and have those conversations with other men, because you'll realize real quickly that they feel the exact same way, and they were just almost waiting for another man to say the same thing to them and own it so that they could.
Right. Yeah. Interesting you say that, obviously men speaking to other men. This past Monday, I did a focus group with 10 of the Black barbershop owners, or barbershop owners. A few of them were just men of color. And we had a great discussion. We kind of partnered with one of the health systems, and it was just a lively focus group, and what they were looking to gauge is, what is our thoughts around access to health, and how do we perceive some of the clientele that come through the barbershop. And as I'm interacting with these 10 barbershops, I realized that basically these men, there's only 15,600 Black men in our county, in Dane County, and we represent 6% of the male population. And as I'm looking at all these barbershops, I'm realizing their probably combined clientele is about 7,500, 8,000. And looking and listening to these men, you realize the reach and the connection that they have. But in listening to our men talk about some of the challenges, we circled back to COVID-19 and our new normal. The barbershops were closed for a while, and they just reopened about 2.5 weeks ago. And it's just a new normal for them. And one of the things that was loud and clear, and I wrote it down, as they would like to have more masks, in terms of the PPEs. I just can't find them. And the fact that these men shared that, I was able to get on the phone the very next day, and I spoke with Jennifer Ellistad from SSM Health, and I shared that concern with her. And yesterday, I picked up a box of 430 cloth masks that were donated, and it's just, again, using your resources. But what it did, it started with those men sharing that. Would they have shared that if they didn't have any other aspect? I don't think they would. But the fact that they shared that, and not only when they shared it, I said, you know what, we can assist you with that. And being able to follow through with that, these are the kind of things that we have to get comfortable and consistent with. Is when men speak, we hear them, and not only do we hear them, but we take their concerns and we follow up with them. And so I'm really pleased that we've gotten some of the cloth masks to 3 other barbershops. And after this session today, I'll be running over and delivering to other barbershops. And we want to have them all delivered no later than next Tuesday when they open the doors back up. So I agree with you guys, having men speaking to other men and just being vulnerable. But not only that, when they speak, we have to be better at responding. So Dr. Thomas, I think you want to share some things.
So I think you put your finger on the pulse of a very important issue, that when men speak, we have to be willing to both listen and respond. And whether or not you knew it, I think that is exactly the issue that happened with George Floyd.
Yeah.
He spoke, nobody listened,
Right.
and nobody responded. And that resulted in his death.
Right.
And you think of the mortality rate for Black men across the country. Aaron, I know you can definitely speak to it specifically for Wisconsin and for Dane County, but you think about it across the board for the entire country, and then extend it to beyond our country, but across the world. The mortality rate for Black men is significantly lower than for any other group, any other racial group. And people may say, well, that's because of unhealthy eating practices, blah, 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 which makes sense. That's part of the equation. But the beginning of the equation is not the unhealthy eating practices. The beginning of the equation is Black men being in spaces where people are not listening and not responding. That's where the equation begins, because the unhealthy eating practices are born out of poor employment opportunities, are born out of limited educational opportunities, are born out of being forced to live in redlined districts that are known to be disastrous to health. So all of these things, yes, the final analysis is these symptoms, these mental health issues, these physical health issues. Those are the symptoms, but the actual causes are a lot more insidious, are a lot more institutional, are a lot more codified in the way we think of our systems, the way we think about our world. And we have to be willing now. I think if anything, what needs to happen is that we need to step back and think of exactly what went on with George Floyd as a microcosm of what's going on with Black people across the country and possibly across the world. That people are speaking and we're either not listening, and even when we are listening, we're not responding. So for example, when I see things like police kneeling, taking a knee, and institutions and businesses sending out these cookie cutter responses that say we affirm Black lives, blah, 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 blah. We've heard all that before. We've seen all these performances before. That's not hearing. That's telling us that you're hearing the noise, but are you hearing the words, what we're speaking from our hearts? That's what needs to get heard. And once that is heard, we will see people not just responding with these performances, we will see people responding with meaningful actions, not cosmetic changes, but meaningful actions that have long-term consequences.
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. I want to circle back, Dr. Edwards. You mentioned compassion fatigue. Let's talk about that. I've heard the term, haven't really kind of researched it, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's a fancy way of saying what I think that we say personally, that we're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
That's the compassion fatigue is the scientific way to say that. And that's exactly the feeling that it creates in folks, whether it be personally or professionally. Compassion fatigue is real and it's debilitating. And again, the danger in that is that people then forget to take care of themselves because they're too busy taking care of others. And then because they forget to take care of themselves, they are worse at taking care of others and they're worse at taking care of themselves. So it becomes this chain reaction that you do not want to go down. And it helps to know some of those signs and symptoms that Dr. Thomas, Derrick, and I said from the very beginning, that to catch them early, to nip them in the bud before it becomes compassion fatigue, because it just comes down into this spiral or you dig yourself into this hole that's just harder to dig up out of. And it's important that we're talking about it. That's why it's important to bring up. So the way that I will teach folks in my classrooms on what to do to combat compassion fatigue right off the bat is the exact opposite: self-compassion, exercising self-compassion for yourself. And here's where I will share my screen and show you again, we have wonderful scientists that study self-compassion and what components it's made up of. And can you see this on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And I actually teach that backwards. I teach that from right to left. And what mindfulness will teach us about going through fatigue, about being sick and tired of being sick and tired and exhausted. What mindfulness reminds us to do is to be there with that fatigue, be there with that sense of being overwhelmed or tired. Acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the hurt. Don't try and avoid it or deny it or sweep it under the rug and act like it's not really there. Acknowledge it, be there with it. Don't resist your own suffering, kind of an idea. Sit with that. It's helpful to acknowledge the fact that you're in pain so that then you can start taking some steps towards addressing that pain. So it really begins with mindfulness. Be mindful and aware of the suffering that you're feeling in the moment that's making you feel exhausted and sick and tired of being sick and tired. Be present with that, and even turn toward it. And turning toward it is either acknowledging it yourself or telling others that, hey, I'm really going through this. I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I feel mentally and physically depleted and exhausted, and I don't know how I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be the best husband or be the best friend or be the best employee that I can be. I need help. That's being present with it. That's acknowledging it and saying, I'm mindful of what's going on right now, and I'm going to speak to it. And how empowering just that first step really can be. It helps you validate your own suffering, especially if nobody else in your life is willing to do that. So you can be mindful and validating of that suffering yourself. And then that's what helps you move on to what's called common humanity. So where you understand that you're a human being that's going through normal, negative, difficult emotions, just like everybody else is going through normal, negative, difficult emotions. And that's what makes it okay. That's a reason to connect, because you say, I'm suffering. I know other people are suffering, because suffering is not unique to me as a human being. We all do. So that's my reason to realize my common humanity to everybody else going through this, especially other Black and brown folks. We're all going through it with you together. So recognize the common humanity in your suffering, in your exhaustion, in your compassion fatigue. We're all going through it. You're not alone. It's normal. It's healthy to feel those things, in fact. Reach out and use it as a reason to connect. That's our common humanity through that similar suffering and exhaustion that we're all feeling. So it helps when you frame that experience as part of the larger human experience and something that's not just specific to you, or something that's not singling you out, and like there's something wrong with you because you feel so exhausted, or because you feel like you're feeling so much suffering. That's not special to you. That is not something that's only happening to you. Frame that in the larger experience of the human experience. We're all going through it together. It's a reason to connect. And then that goes off to the kindness. Once you recognize those first two steps, I'm mindful of my suffering and my exhaustion. I recognize the common humanity in my suffering and in my exhaustion. So then now what do? Now I be kind to myself through that, just like I would be if a friend came to me and told me that they were exhausted and they were suffering. How am I going to respond to them? I'm going to respond supportively. I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to help them. What can I do to lighten this load for you, or to take this burden from you, or to just be here with you in this through listening or through supporting you? What can I do? I'm going to be nice to you. I'm going to be kind to you. I'm going to be loving and supportive to you. Be that exact same thing to yourself. I have to tell my students this a lot. How would you react when you have a friend or a loved one come up to you who's suffering? You're not going to be mean to them. You're not going to make fun of them. You're not going to be dismissive of their pain. You're going to be supportive there. So why aren't you treating yourself the same way, like your own best friend, when you're going through it? So don't criticize yourself. Don't beat yourself up for feeling exhausted, or feeling like you're going through suffering, or feeling like you're having a tougher time than what it seems like the world around you might be having. Don't beat yourself up for that. Be kind to yourself through that. Be easy on yourself about that. And then that's just taking care of your own pain and being with yourself through some of that pain by comforting yourself, however that looks, soothing yourself, whatever that looks like, validating your own pain, whatever you know you need to feel better. It's different for every individual, but you've got to really love yourself, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, do what you know you need to do, like your own best friend or your own mother or father would do for you if they found out that you were suffering. And then if you want a different approach, maybe it's not going to be so soft. Maybe you're somebody who is more like myself in a lot of ways, where I become my own best coach. If I told a coach in my past athletic experiences that I was hurting, that I was tired, that I didn't know if I could go on, they're going to motivate me. They're going to help protect me. They're going to help provide for me. They're going to help motivate me through that and kind of pep talk me and be that best coach. So I'm not only going to be my best friend through my suffering and through my exhaustion, but maybe I'm going to be my own best coach through my own suffering and my own exhaustion, and really talk myself up to get through this. And it's easier said than done. It takes practice, just like any other skill, but self-compassion is a skill. It is a personal skill, and it begins with being mindful of your pain, recognizing the common humanity in that, and then taking the time to take care of yourself through that, because you're worth it, because you deserve it, and because you're not going to be any good to anybody else, including yourself, if you're overwhelmed with all these negative feelings and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired all the time without doing something about it. You've got to take care of yourself and love yourself. And that's my remedy to compassion fatigue, is self-compassion.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Derrick, I'd like for you to, touch on that a little bit, but then kind of break it down with us. Help us who are not in New York on a daily basis. We want to understand what you're doing and how your program is just off the chart. And you know, if your website been getting a lot of hits, because I've been checking it out, you're doing some really good work, man, and I appreciate that. I'm sure that your community appreciates this, and probably the nation, I'm sure, appreciates what you're doing. But can you share a little bit about your work and this compassion fatigue, if you want?
You know what, and that's really one of the things, Dr. Edwards, that you brought up in terms of the compassion fatigue. I didn't know it under those terms, but that's one of the things we also talk about in terms of as men, you know, because and one of the things we always say is that with men, everything for us is about be the protector, be the provider. Everything for us is characterized externally. Okay, everything is externally. So that's how we sort of value who we are, because it has to be outside. We have to do something for somebody, you know, my son, my daughter, my wife, you know, the community. You're the protector, you know, you're going to lead us to victory. So everything is external when it comes to men. So we try to talk about in terms of the clubs is that we try to really look about internal. You have to take care of yourself. So if you want to be that great protector, you want to be that great provider, you want to be that great leader of the community, you have to start with you first.
Yes.
And we always say, when you get on the plane, what's the first thing they tell you to do, right? Put on the oxygen, your mask first. So you're no use to all of us if you do not take care of yourself first. If you really want to help us, put your mask on first. Once you are secured, then you can really be of a benefit to all of us. Yep. And that's part of the challenge with a lot of us as men, because it's that whole socialization process for us. You know, we've always been socialized. And then we have the other thing with some of us where if we didn't grow up with a dad, we're also insecure. And we're constantly trying to define who we are as men, as fathers, you know, and sometimes even if we had a father, but our father really wasn't that engaging. Our father never really said, I love you. You know, so a lot of us men are dealing with a lot of those issues, and we just want to say, listen, you know, I just want to be human. So the human is the last thing that we deal with. We deal with all the other categories, but we never really deal with ourselves. It's just being human. Right. You know, and we try to tell men, you know, just be yourself, be human. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say, I'm hurt. It's okay to say, I need help. Mm-hmm. You know, so a lot of times in the club meetings, the dads are like, listen, I'm going through an issue. Here it is. I'm a man, but you know what? I don't know what to do in terms of my child. Mm-hmm. I need some help. So those are like, wow. So for men, getting to that point where you can say, you know what? I need help, but also knowing that there is a place to go. So in answer to your question, what we try to do in terms of Real Dads Network is that we have these Real Dads Club meetings where we give men that space where they can talk. Because what happens is that we don't really have a space, and we're always, as men, we're always guarded. You know, so to put our guards down, it's like we feel as though if I put my guards down, then I'm going to be hurt. But as men, we don't want to be hurt, but it's okay to be hurt. Yeah. Because when you're hurt, it also shows a sign of strength.
Absolutely.
You know, so those are the things that we try to do in terms of the club, is just to get men to realize it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be strong, but you got to also understand there's a place and time, but also identifying and knowing when to be strong and when to be weak. Mm-hmm. You know, so in terms of the club, we're just trying to just strengthen men, fathers, communities, and also understanding that we have to change public policy. So one of the things that we've been advocating for in terms of Real Dads Network is for a shared parenting bill. You know, so we have this thing where I say this thing where programs are progress, but policy is power. You know, so we have to change public policy. And right now, in terms of the country, there's only one state that has a shared parenting bill, and that's Kentucky. And they passed it 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, and the shared parenting bill just states simply that if a mother and father, two fit parents, there is no issues of child abuse or domestic violence. They're two fit parents, but they just can't live together. Mm-hmm. So if they decide to separate, that the presumptions that custody should be 50-50. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's one of the things that we're pushing for in terms of New York State, in terms of policy, because we have a lot of programs, we have a lot of people who are doing work, but at the end of the day, we really have to come together towards changing public policy. And even when we talk about what we're going through in terms of the protests and everything, a lot of that stuff is good because we need to bring awareness. But at the end of the day, we have to show up in the elections.
Hmm.
And we don't tell people who to vote for, but we tell you, you need to vote. So you can make it, and you need to, we tell you first, you need to be educated. So you need to study the people in terms of, you know, the values, those things that are important to you. And then you need to look at candidates and see how do they fit your agenda. And if they don't fit your agenda, then maybe that's somebody you may not want to vote for. But we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but we are going to tell you to be educated about the voting process and that you need to register and you need to vote. You know, so, and the challenge for us has just been just getting men to understand that that is an important part that they have to play, because the challenge with a lot of Black men is that when we look at the voting, we look at it as being something as part of the government. You know, so it's like, that's the government. So therefore I'm not getting involved with that. You know, they're not going to change. They're going to do whatever they want to do. Even with the census, we couldn't get Black men to do the census.
Right.
Because it's the government. But it's like a big part for us is really changing the mindset. You know, changing our mindset, really understanding that, you know what, in order for us to really make it, we can make a difference, but we got to do it collectively. And one of the big things that we've been trying to do at Real Dads Network, we did a thing called We Connect, where we brought all the organizations together in the city and saying, listen, at the end of the day, in order for us to make change, we all have to be on the same page. We all have to commit to collectively working together for a common cause. So, and that has to be the mindset that we preach at the club. And I tell people what we have is Real Dads Network. And the network is the biggest part of what we do. We try to bring people together. We try to bring strategies, ideas, and we just really try to make a difference. But the key to it all is that we all have to be on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Dr. Thomas, I know you touched a little bit about what we were talking about, but you're up next.
What do you want me to touch on?
Oh, just kind of the conversation we were initially talking about. We started talking about compassion fatigue, and I just didn't know if you had any follow-up to what Dr. Edwards and Derrick was saying.
So I think I really love our audience. They are actively involved here. And so somebody who's listening sent me a correction and said, I think you were saying something about lower mortality rates for Black men. And I actually meant higher mortality rate. So thank you very much for pointing that out. The audience.
I heard that too. I knew what you meant, brother.
I'm like, thank you very much for pointing that out. And somebody else also was asking for clarification on, I think Dr. Edwards did a really good job on pointing out kind of the process beyond compassion fatigue, how to deal with it. And somebody was asking a really poignant question. Great, now that we know how to deal with it if we have it, how do we know if we have it? How do we know if we're there? And I think Dr. Edwards just put up a really extensive list. I'm sure it's not exhaustive, but it's a really good list of things that people could look out for. And I think I'll just read through them just in case people aren't able to see them. So he says, feeling burdened by the suffering of others, blaming others for your suffering, isolating yourself, a loss of pleasure in life or other activities that you found pleasurable before, difficulty concentrating, insomnia or difficulty sleeping, physical and mental tiredness or fatigue, holding or bottling up your emotions inside, increased nightmares, so waking up with night terrors or nightmares, feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness, feeling restless, frequently complaining about your work life. So always complaining about your work, more than you may have been doing before, of course. Overeating, so finding yourself just eating, not because you're hungry, just because there's nothing else to do, or because you're so distracted, you're just like downing a bag of chips or some other unhealthy thing. Excessive use of drugs or alcohol, poor self-care, beginning to receive a lot of complaints about your work attitude and even home attitude. Your kids or your spouse or people that you're living with will start telling you things like, why are you behaving this way? And you never used to behave in that way before. And another one of them is denial. No, I'm good, I'm all right. And I think that's the go-to. Even today, a friend of mine called me up and said, hey, "Hey, Alvin, how are you doing?" And my instinctive response was, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good." Meanwhile, in my head, there's this turmoil and trying to just come to terms with what's going on and what I'm going to do next. And that's why I ended up having to go off on my patio and take care of my little plants and put on my mini Riperton and green to kind of help cool me down and give me a different space to engage. I think Derrick, you pointed out you made a really important point, I thought, among all the other important points that you made. But the one that kind of really stood out to me is something that we've been talking for quite a while about, and I think we talked about it with Aaron and Logan in previous conversations, that men and boys are taught to function in roles, not in humanity.
Right.
So you're a boy, but you're a basketball player or football player or brother who has to protect a younger brother or sister. You have these roles that you play. And as a father, you have your roles. You're the provider. You're the man of the house. You're the first line of defense. You're the disciplinarian. You're the blah, 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 blah. And there's very little space for who you are as a person, the humanity. And we see it not just in these obvious ways, but we also see it in the way we talk about boys, the way we treat boys. And I talk a lot about how boys and men have been and continue to be denied their tears and their fears. You're not allowed to cry or to feel like crying as a boy or as a man. You're not supposed to be afraid. Even if everything around you tells you, your body tells you, you need to be afraid and you need to start preparing to either run or defend. And we're taught, no, you always stand ready, unafraid. And we don't expect that these things will have long-term consequences, not just for the man, but for every other person around him, because he's never allowed his humanity.
Yep.
And if he's Black, even less so he's allowed his humanity.
You know, Dr. Thomas, you're helping me think about some language things too, and Derrick, you as well. You guys are really inspiring me to kind of think about how we speak to other men and how we speak to other boys, just off of habit sometimes. And I think that language, Derrick, you were talking about change in mindset, and that's spot on. I think another piece of that is changing language, and I think that Aaron and Dr. Thomas know that I'm big on this. How the words that we're using and how we are responding back is so important. And I'm going to go beyond in the future now, saying it's okay to not be okay, or it's okay to be emotional or vulnerable. I'm going to go beyond that, and I'm going to start telling people, especially men and Black men, it's good to be emotional. It's good to be vulnerable. It's good to be afraid. These things are good things, and reminding people that there is no such thing as courage, which is a manly trait, quote unquote. There's no such thing as courage without fear. And authenticity, being real, keeping it real. That's something that men aspire to be. There's no such thing as being authentic or authenticity without admitting your own vulnerability as a human being. So I think the language that we use is a big piece of changing that mindset. Even getting beyond, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to cry. No, it's good to cry. It's good to feel bad. It's good to feel hurt.
Logan, I would go even further and say, not just is it good, it's normal.
Yes.
It's human. It's human. I wouldn't even put a value judgment on it. It is, right. It's who we are. It's what we are.
Right.
Dogs cry.
Yes.
Why shouldn't we? Why can't we?
Yes. Yes, we have to speak that way. We have to speak that way. And
right.
We just really do. And I just love that we got a panel of beautiful men here that are willing to speak that way. And we know it. We know nobody would question anyone's manhood on this panel. You know?
Logan, did you just call me beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to hear this dialogue, and I love it, you know, but you just said dogs cry.
Yes.
You know, yes, absolutely. And there was something that was floating around social media this week. A physician made the comment at some point that there was a survey that was circulated to students, medical students, and first, second, third year, whatever. But they felt that they really believed that Black people didn't feel pain. And I started to, and as I listened to that, it was consistent with what I saw in my days of working as a police officer. And and hats off to them cats that do that job. It wasn't for me. But as I listened to that, and I paralleled that with some of what I was seeing, little things that as I saw some of my coworkers, of course, again, when I was in uniform, when they would interact with white citizens, there was this calmness about them. But when they would interact with people of color, but especially Black men, I saw this rage. They were interacting with this rage. And, there were a few times that I stepped in, needed to, but I remember that, and then it brought me back to all the things that we were taught in police academy, especially when we went through that force option continuum. And it talked about the stages on how you deal with things, particularly how do you meet an aggressive person. And what jumped out at me was that doctor's statement that people really believe that Black people don't feel pain. Why would you, as a police officer, use your voice? Why would you, as a police officer, use your baton? Why would you, as a police officer, use your pepper spray or a taser if you really believe that this person doesn't feel pain? This is potentially why you see a lot of these guys escalate to deadly force. And this has to change. Again, when you said dogs cry, I don't know why that jumped out at me, and I wanted to share that. But how do we take on, as men take on, just the existence when there are those that are in the community that want to control us, but we as men, we're tough, and it is what it is. We grew up, some of us grew up without our fathers. Some of us had to get into some little petty fights along the way, and that toughens you up. But how do we deal with this society that when there's people out here that believe that they have to be so aggressive with us because we don't feel pain? Can anybody speak to that a little bit?
I would say in terms of, I go back to one of the things that I always talk about is that change starts with us. It starts with us. And even when we're talking to the dads, and the dads always wants to talk about, well, here it is. I'm doing all of these things to work towards improving, my life and my interaction with my child and the mother of my child. But what about her? But she's not doing anything. But we always come back to, you have to focus on you first. So it's so easy for us to always look at what everybody else is not doing. So it's like, before we start talking about what everybody else is not doing, let's take care of our house first. So when I say to Black men is that first, we have to come together ourselves. We have to be comfortable to have conversations with each other and to know that we can trust each other. And then we can start saying, let's come up with some sort of plan. So one of the things we can start saying, what are some of the things that are happening in our communities that we can kind of like come together and do? Well, I would say the first thing is, and I always go back to, I use as an example, the Tea Party. Well, the Tea Party, when Obama was elected, they said, no way are we going to allow this to happen. So people gathered together and they said, we're going to go into politics. We're going to control who a local person is. We're going to vote. We're going to change policies in our communities to make change. So in terms of us, we have to say, okay, listen, in terms of our communities, we know the most important thing is the local elections, right? That affects our daily lives.
Yes.
So what we're going to do in our communities, we're going to come together, create an agenda, and we're going to register and we're going to vote.
Yes.
Then we're going to create some policies that we want. So therefore, when things are happening in our communities, like some of the judges, some of the commissioners, some of those positions are, elected positions. So therefore, you can control in terms of who's going to be in some of those positions. We start talking about some of these DAs; those are elected positions. So, but when you have a plan and you say, okay, you know what, we have to change public policy. The challenge with a lot of men is that we come to this thing where we say, you know what, it doesn't make a difference what I do. Yes, it does. They're going to do whatever they want. But the reality is you are still a part of this game.
Yes.
You're still, this is a game that's being played. These are the rules of this game. Right now, there is no other game in town. So in order to make the changes, we have to make the change ourselves. And you brought it up in Dr. Edwards, it goes into everything we're talking about. First, we got to take care of ourselves. Take care of ourselves physically. And then once we take care of ourselves physically and we've taken care of our homes, then we need to go out into our communities. And then we need to go beyond that in terms of our nation. But it starts with us just saying, what is our plan, and working among ourselves and figuring out what we need to do as opposed to what everyone else is doing.
Right.
So
Right.
I'll jump on this. I think Derrick is spot on.
Absolutely.
But again, you know how I work. I like the spot on piece, but then I also try to find a different angle to widen the discussion. And I think what you were asking earlier was how do we get men to prepare and respond to these beliefs and this kind of socialization and whatnot.
Yes.
I definitely agree that we definitely can talk about changing the systems and changing policy, and all that is necessary, but you have to start with yourself as well. As Dr. Edwards always likes to remind us, that we have to go back to the things that are easiest to control, the things that are right within our grasp, and that's us. And then once you've taken care of you, then you can eventually start launching out and finding these other spaces that you want to control. But I think that these beliefs, so recently I went into a medical facility to have blood drawn. And I remember this individual drawing my blood in a spot that I've never had blood drawn before. And I found the process to be particularly painful. And the person was just kind of moving on. Usually they apologize and they kind of pamper you as they're doing this. And the person was just moving on like just regular. So I shouted. I let the individual know by my response that my skin is not plastic. Like, this is a human being that you're treating it, and this hurts. Like, ow, that hurts.
Right.
And then the individual jumped back and was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, yes, because I want you to be aware that you're dealing with a human being and that your response has to be one of humanity. One of our audience members just pointed out, and I agree with the individual, that these myths, for example, of Black people and Black men in particular, having higher thresholds of pain. We see a number of women dying giving birth because the assumption is that, oh no, if she just gave birth, she's strong. She's a Black woman, she's strong, so she can deal with it. Oh, she's still bleeding, don't worry. Eventually that will go away because she's strong, she can deal with it. And that's not what we're seeing with other groups. So, I mean, there is research on this. There's significant disparity in the deaths of Black women giving birth and in Black people in hospitals. These myths remind me and echo back to the same kind of myths that we saw and we learned about that were used during the Holocaust. The aim of those myths was to dehumanize. Yeah. And the aim of these current myths remains to dehumanize, to treat as less than, to treat as not the same as me. You don't look like me, you can't feel like me, you don't experience like me. We did not have the same background growing up, or we couldn't have the same background growing up because phenotypically, physically, you look so different from me. And once we begin to accept those dehumanization myths, then we start treating people like not human. So we assume if we're going up to arrest a Black man, He must have the prowess and the strength of a horse and can run and is athletic. Therefore, I can't walk up to him and talk to him. I have to physically tackle him. I have to hold him down. 4 of us need to hold him down and sit on him because he won't feel that he's strong. So even if we're on his chest and he can't breathe, no, he'll be all right because he's strong. He's a strong Black man. Even if you have your knee on his neck with your full weight, while 3 other people hold him down. So he just not just can't breathe, but he can't even move his body. But that's okay because he's strong. Like he's a strong specimen. And even when he cries, I can't breathe. Oh, come on. He's just playing. He's trying to trick us so that we can loosen up and he can run around and attack us. Even when a grown man starts crying for his dead mother, even that is not enough for compassion and humanity to come forward because of the myths, because of the dehumanization messages that we have been taught, that people have been taught. And I think it's easy to see it in other people. It's a lot more difficult to see it in ourselves, how we've internalized those dehumanization messages. So we tell our little boy who falls and skins his knee, man up. Don't be a girl, because being a girl is a bad thing. Don't be a girl. Stop crying. You have to be strong. That is a dehumanization of our child. When we tell our child, you mean you only got 16 that test and XYZ person got all this? You have to be better than that. That is a dehumanization of our child, because we're telling our child, your value to me depends on how you measure up to somebody else. So we have to be really careful about how we're dehumanizing our own selves because of the messages that we've been taught and that we've internalized. So I think that there is space. The work has to be done in changing the systems, in changing the socialization, the myths, the dehumanization myths that are out there that are being taught to other people. But as Derrick said, we also, and as Dr. Edwards always says, we have to come back to, we can both chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. So we can do that work while also working on ourselves. That the first community that we need to impact is that small community within ourselves and our family. Work on being human, on enjoying and celebrating your own humanity, and enjoying and encouraging the humanity of your children and your spouse.
Excellent, excellent. So, gentlemen, the time is 2:17. So I want to take about 3 minutes, and tell me about it. It goes by fast, and I've been getting a lot of text messages. Again, the audience really truly appreciates everything that you guys are sharing and really connecting with you. So I wanted to share that. But let's take about 3 minutes to talk about your area, your specialty, and how it connects to what's going on today. And so our guest, we're going to let Derrick Phillips go first. And then also at the end, Derrick, if you can let people know how to get in touch with you.
All right, Aaron, I'm having a little difficulty hearing. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, yes. So we basically wanted to give you 3 minutes each to kind of share about your perspective on how do we connect with people given everything that's happening today. And then also, Derrick, I would like for you to share with folks how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, so how do we connect with people?
Yes.
A big thing that I've been using in terms of just us connecting together, I think we have to really start to use social media. And I think part of the challenge is that a lot of us are really not using the social platforms, and I'm not big on that, but I'm like, in order to make some of the changes that we really need to make, I think we have to start using that platform strategically to really connect. And even the fact that even us having this conversation now is based on the power of technology and social media.
Yes.
the fact that we can be in different states, so we don't always have to have, we got to change our mindsets in terms of how do we make the change. The change is we have enough tools in the toolbox to make the change. And one of the things I've always said is that with all the technology that we have today, we're probably more disconnected now than at any other point in time of our history because we're not using the tools that we have. So what I think will be very instrumental is for us to continue to have these conversations, but also to link other people into these conversations. So therefore we come together with a collective agenda and and work towards a common collective effort for a common cause with a plan in terms of what it is we want to do and want to accomplish. So that's what I was saying in terms of that. In terms of Real Dads Network, we're just trying to do our part. And my motto has always been that if everybody just do their part, then no one will be left doing the whole thing. So we're just trying to do our part in the big picture.
Excellent, excellent. And if you can share your website out there.
The website is realdadsnetwork.org. And you can also reach us on Instagram at just Real Dads Network.
Excellent, excellent. All right, and then we'll go to Dr. Thomas, and then Dr. Edwards, you can close us out.
So I would say that in this space, we want to remember that fathers matter. And in this space, even more so, we want to remember that Black fathers matter. And that's whether they are physically sharing space and home with their child or not. We need to work on co-parenting practices, supporting Black men and Black mothers with co-parenting, but also supporting fathers in celebrating and finding again their common humanity. It's in finding their own humanity and celebrating their own humanity that they can pass that on to their children. And for the dads who are listening, this is an opportunity for you to find your humanity, to embrace it, whatever that looks like for you. Whether that means you find somebody to talk with about it, you find ways to read about it, you continue listening to these discussions, you need to find some space, create some space for yourself where you connect with yourself first as a person, not as a provider, not as a brother, not as anything else, but just as a you. We've lived centuries as Black men without being just men or just being people. And then once you've done that, once you start doing that for yourself, then you also want to be paying attention to your own children and how their humanity is being undermined and how you can play a critical role in making sure that at least in your interactions, that humanity is supported and you give them the tools to make sure that they themselves can support their own humanity. Because there's enough out there that's going to try to undermine it for them. Don't give them tools and messages that's going to further undermine that.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Dr. Edwards.
You know what some of this was reminding me of is some of the protests and the picket signs that you saw back in the 1960s and 1970s. And I wasn't around for it, but I still see a lot of these images of signs that say, "I am a man." Mm-hmm. And as somebody who wasn't there for it or understood the 100% context of what that sign meant when I first saw it, these conversations are reminding me exactly what they meant way back in the 1960s. You're forgetting that we're men, and the last three words of that, M-A, or the last three letters, I'm sorry, of that M-A-N, you're forgetting that we're human, that we're humans, and that we're men. I am a man. We're not animals. We don't have this superhuman physical strength that means you can treat our bodies however you'd like.
Yes.
And going back to some of the broadening our perspective of what a man is, I think what we're talking about, a man with emotions, a man that's vulnerable, a man that cries, all those things are within the definition of manhood. I think broadening our perspective of pain. So they feel like in the past or even currently that we can withstand the pain, whether it be a black mother in labor or a Black man under police custody, we can withstand the pain. I just say broaden your perspective of what pain is. Pain is emotional, pain is spiritual, pain is psychological, pain is social. So it's asinine to think that any one human has more pain tolerance over another when you look at pain that broadly. We all have emotional pain that we feel. And just because I might be able to take something more physically, that does not mean I'm able to take it more emotionally in terms of pain. So just like we broaden our perspectives of manhood, we have to broaden our perspective of pain too. And it reminds me of sexual assault prevention trainings that I'll give student athletes at my university. Is that just tweaking the language, tweaking the perspective and the mindset to understand the pain that you're causing. That you'll hear folks say, well, I didn't forcibly, aggressively rape somebody. That means it wasn't rape. You can rape somebody softly. You can rape somebody without physically hurting them. And they say, well, I didn't hurt them, so that must mean everything what I did was okay. And it's like, well, okay, you didn't physically hurt them, but what hurt and damage did you cause emotionally and spiritually and socially? Yes, you did hurt them. And I didn't use any weapons though, so that must mean it's okay. Well, your weapons were your mouth, your weapons were your hands, your weapon was your penis. We have to change change and broaden our perspective of what manhood is, about what a weapon is, about what pain is, about what hurt is. It's not just physical. And the same thing with health. It's not just physical, it's mental, it's social. I think that language change, and I think speaking that way to other men and to other Black men in particular is going to be a small part of those beginning steps as to how we start seeing actual change. And if I can, and if I can just answer simply your question, Aaron, about how do we connect? How do we better connect? I'll just try and be simple about it. I think that we connect through our pain, through our suffering. And you have to know that you're not alone in your pain and suffering. That's how you connect to other people. So be mindful of your pain, be mindful of everybody else's pain, see the common humanity in your pain, see the common humanity in everybody else's pain around you, and then be kind to yourself through that, and then be kind and loving to everybody else through theirs. That self-compassion model that I showed you works not just for the individual practicing it, but it works to apply that same model outwardly to everybody else as well. And that's how I think we connect, through our pain and through our suffering that we all have in common. And if I can make one more comment to a comment on the chat section here, speaking about listening and responding as men, and how it's important to acknowledge certain things that we typically would shy away from, like Black tears and fears, or Black emotions and vulnerabilities. We have to respond appropriately and acknowledge those things. And a comment that we have, it looks like from Teresa, says, thank you for highlighting the killing of Black men and women by police and civilians. I would also include the killing of Black trans folks. I think that as a culture, as men, as Black men, as a Black culture, as straight heterosexual men, we have to listen to and acknowledge these folks and speak to it. So I don't want that comment to go unnoticed, as if we just saw it and didn't say anything. So again, coming from somebody who identifies myself as human, but then going to those boxes of identity roles that Derrick was talking about, coming from a straight heterosexual biracial Black man, Christian man, I can say that trans people have always existed. Trans people have always existed. Non-binary people who don't identify as male or female are valid, are people, are humans. Trans women are real women. Trans men are real men. You know, and that's coming from a straight heterosexual biracial Black Christian man. And we all have to do better, I think, at responding to that, acknowledging that, saying that out loud, and giving credit where credit's due for those folks as too on their side of the struggle. We've got our own struggles. Everybody's got their kind of side, but we're all, again, connected through that common struggle that we're all going through.
Excellent, excellent. Well, gentlemen, it's 2:29. We are out of time. I want to absolutely, once again, thank this fabulous panel. Obviously, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Thomas, you guys, I called you guys my road dogs. You know, we are going to kick it. We're going to keep it going. And also, Derrick Phillips, founder and executive director of Real Dads Network. Derrick, thank you so much for joining us. You know that seat that you're in and this little space here, you feel free to come and anytime you get ready. We just love having you today, you know. So definitely want to thank my sponsors, SSM Health, the Wisconsin Partnership Program, and then to all of us folks. Thank you so much for helping us keep this going. And I do want to mention that next week I will be out of town, so we will not be going live. We will be resuming the following Saturday. So with that said, thank you guys all. Thank you participants. Thank you community for joining us. And if you have any questions, obviously, please continue to leave those. Our IT people will get those to us. If you need any follow-up on anyone that you heard today, please let me know and I will get their contact information to you. But with that said, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care. All right. Bye.